Hello, today we're doing lesson 8.6. We're going to solve rational equations. There's two ways to solve rational equations depending on what you are given, so we're going to start with the way it's a little bit easier. You can use cross-multiplying to solve a rational equation when each side of the equation is a single rational expression. So when we have one fraction on the left and one fraction on the right, you can go ahead and cross-multiply to solve. So go ahead and do that. Sometimes I'll put parentheses to remind myself to distribute. That's probably the biggest mistake students make. It doesn't matter which part you put on the left and which part you put on the right. So I'm just going to go ahead and do 3 times x minus 7. I get 3x minus 21. And on the right, I get 5x times 2, which is 10x. Now, what I'm going to do in this problem, there's no x squared, so I'm just going to go ahead and get x by itself. So I can subtract 3x from both sides. When I do that, I get negative 21 equals 7x, and x equals negative 3. Now, you always want to check and make sure that it would not make a denominator 0. For example, if this was x plus 3, this would not be a solution because we can't have that denominator be 0. But this will work. I just take a glance at it. This is fine, and this is our final answer. Let's go ahead and try another problem. I'm going to go ahead, cross multiply. Like I said, if you need to put parentheses to remind yourself to distribute, please do that. So I'm going to do the 3 times the 4x plus 5 first. So I get 12x plus 15. This side I'm going to do 9 times x plus 1. So I get 9x plus 9. Again, no x squared, so I can just go ahead and move the x over. I get 3x plus 15 equals 9. Subtract 15 from both sides. I get 3x equals negative 6, and x is going to be negative 2. Go ahead, take a look. Doesn't make any denominator 0. You're good. That's your answer. Okay, let's try number 3. Cross multiply again. Negative 4x plus 12 equals 5x plus 15. I subtract 5x from both sides. When I do that, I get negative 9x. I'm going to go ahead and just do the second step as well. Subtract 12 on both sides equals 3. Divide both sides by negative 9, and I get x to be negative 1/3. Take a quick check, plug that back in. We're good. Doesn't make any denominator 0. Now, go ahead, pause the video, and try this first try on your own. When you come back, we're going to do the second type of equation. Okay, welcome back. When a rational equation is not expressed as a proportion, you can solve it by multiplying each side of the equation by the least common denominator of the rational expression. When solving a rational equation, you may obtain solutions that are extraneous. Be sure to check for these by substituting the solutions back into the original equation. I was already talking about this above. We basically don't want the denominator to equal 0, so that's why we're going to always go ahead, take our answer, and check it. Now, from yesterday when we did adding and subtracting, you should be pretty good at finding least common denominators. We're going to need to do that again when our equations look like this. Take a look at this page. Take a glance at them. See the difference between these equations and the first page? We have 2 fractions on the left, no fractions on the right. We have no fraction and a fraction on the left, and then a fraction on the right. So when we don't simply have one rational expression on each side of the equation, we need to multiply by the least common denominator. By doing that, you're going to get rid of all the denominators. So step 1 in these problems would be to find the least common denominator. So when I look at number 1, I'm only going to look at the 2 and the x. So the least common denominator is going to be 2x. So what you can do is you can multiply by what's missing, or you can multiply every single term by 2x and then cross off what you don't need. Watch, 2x, 2x, and don't forget this term, 2x. So in this problem, the 2's will cancel. So I'm only multiplying 7 by x, which is 7x. In this problem, the x's will cancel, so I'm multiplying 3 by 2, which is 6. Then we have the equal sign, and I am multiplying 3 by 2x, which is 6x. Go ahead and subtract 6x from both sides. I get x, and then subtract 6. So we're going to subtract 6x and 6. Subtract 6x and 6. So I get x equals negative 6. Take this answer, glance at the top, see if anything doesn't work. It's fine. We don't get 0 for a denominator. That's our answer. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and try another problem. So number 1, the least common denominator. The only two denominators I have are x minus 5 and x. So my least common denominator is going to be x times x minus 5. Like I said, what I'll usually do is I'll only multiply by what's missing. If you want to always write this for every single term and then cross off like I did on number 1, I think that's a good way to start. So 1 has no denominator, so we're going to multiply by the entire thing. Okay, I'm going to write this entire thing here. And then write this here too. Okay, so I'm going to multiply 1 times this entire thing. Luckily it's a 1, so I'm really just distributing the x. So I have x squared minus 5x. This one we're going to cross off the x minus 5. Now be careful here. This is a negative 8. Negative 8 times x is negative 8x. Always watch your signs. This one, the x's cancel, so I'm going to go ahead and distribute the 3. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. So when I look at this problem, I notice I have an x squared and an x term, so I'm probably going to have to factor to solve. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write x squared down. I'm going to go ahead and combine these like terms, which is negative 13x, and I'm going to move my 3x over. So I have negative 16x. Then I'm going to add 15 to both sides. So what I did is I kind of did 2 steps in one. I combined my like terms and I moved these terms over to get it equal to 0 because I know I need to factor. So now I have simple AC factoring. What multiplies to give me a 15 adds to give me a negative 16. That would be negative 15 and negative 1. So you end up with 2 answers. You end up with 15 and 1. Go ahead, look at the original. Both of them will work, so both of those are my answers. Okay, let's go ahead and try another problem. So I have 2 more problems here. Okay, let's take a look at number 3. Number 3, I look at the 2 denominators, and it's pretty obvious with all the practice I've been doing that the least common denominator is going to be 2x times x plus 1. So like I said, if you want to go ahead and write this whole thing times every single term, I think that's easier. We'll do that. And then we'll go ahead and multiply. So this first term, I can cross off the x plus 1. So I'm going to take 3x times 2x. That's 6x squared. This one, I'm going to cross off the 2x. Now be careful. You have a negative 5. You are distributing a negative 5. That's probably one of the biggest mistakes students make. So I'm going to subtract 5x and then subtract 5 because negative 5 times x is negative 5x. Negative 5 times 1 is negative 5. Put my equal sign. The 2x cancels again, so I'm going to distribute 3. So this equals 3x plus 3. Now, in this problem, I can see I have an x squared and an x term, so I'm going to go ahead and move both of these over at the same time. And this is why we practice the factoring. I have to factor. I'm going to take a GCF out first. Let me make sure I have this right. Yeah, take a GCF out first. So I'm going to take a 2 out first. So I have 3x squared minus 4x minus 4. Then I have the complicated AC factoring where you're going to go ahead and multiply 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. What multiplies to give me a negative 12 and adds to give me a negative 4 would be negative 6 and 2. You guys can go ahead, rewrite your middle term and factor by grouping, but what you end up getting is 3x plus 2 times x minus 2. We set each factor equal to 0, so I have negative 2/3 and positive 2. I take a look at my original equation. Both of them will work, so both of them are the answers. Okay, let's go ahead and try the last problem, and then you can do the you try on your own. Okay, when I factor this denominator, I have x minus 3, x plus 3. So I can see that my least common denominator is going to be x minus 3 and x plus 3. If you want to write this for the whole thing, you can. So x minus 3, x plus 3, x minus 3, x plus 3, and then x minus 3, and x plus 3. So let's go ahead and do our first term. The x minus 3 cancels here, so I'm multiplying 6 times x plus 3. That's 6x plus 18. This one, the whole thing cancels, and I have just 8x squared This one, the x plus 3 cancels. Now be careful, there's a negative. So you're going to multiply negative 4x times both of these terms. So we get negative 4x squared plus 12. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to leave this positive, so I'm going to move my 6x over, and I'm going to move my 18 over. Okay, so on the left, I end up with 0. On the right, I have 8x squared minus 4x is 4x squared. Then I have the negative 6x, and then I have 12 minus 18, which is, no, I'm sorry, this was supposed to be a 12x. I apologize. So it's supposed to be a 12x. So when I take 12x minus 6x, I get positive 6x. Then minus 18. Okay, so I apologize. I messed this up right here. Anyways, we're going to go ahead and take a 2 out. Then we're going to go ahead and factor. You guys can do that on your own. We get 2x minus 3 and x plus 3. We set each factor equal to 0, so we get 3 halves and negative 3. Which one doesn't work? If we take a look at our original problem, negative 3 doesn't work because it will make this denominator 0. So x equals 3 halves is my only answer. Okay, I want you to pause the video, try the try on your own. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead, write it on the bottom of the paper, and I will see you tomorrow in class.